connection with customers through empathy. Yes, empathy has been a buzzword. I've recently seen so many books being written on empathy by customer experience experts, and empathy is a critical piece in the customer experience, so much so that every customer experience designing model starts with empathy. But before I go further, I want to spend a minute to define what really is empathy. What do you think empathy is? Based on your understanding, whatever you know, what do you think is empathy? It's not a word that I used to hear a while ago that much as I'm hearing today. In fact, not just to relate it to customer experience, but in general, this word is really being talked about, especially in the situations in the world that we are living. Empathy means being able to put ourselves in somebody else's shoes. And if I go further, and being non judgmental and being able to take a neutral, unbiased perspective. And when we have that, we are able to get insights and support the other person for with whom we want to empathize at a different level. So, obviously, in the area of customer experience, empathy becomes super valuable. I'm going to go deeper into this as to how it can become super valuable. And I'm also going to share what some of the leaders are talking about empathy and some examples of empathy. So stay tuned till the end. If you're a customer experience professional, a business leader, an entrepreneur, or someone who wants to connect with your customer at a deeper level, then this subject of building deep connections with customers through empathy is going to be of help to you. If you're there watching it live or you watch the recording, leave your comment. What did you find interesting as you watch or as you listen to this episode? So let's get started. So, as I qualified empathy, similarly, customer empathy is being able to put ourselves in our customers' shoes. And of course, all of us are aware there's so much of training, so much of grooming that happens to sensitize professionals, sensitize service providers, and become empathetic towards customer. But I have seen even with some of the five-star hotels that empathy is at a very superficial level. It's not deep enough. Why? One, because the person who is enacting that role do not have that innate quality, which means inbuilt, which means natural. So if this is not natural, then how do you build empathy? How do you make it as a part of somebody's nature? Nurture or nature, right? So if you don't have it naturally, then you have to build it, which means you have to nurture it. So on that, let me share with you a little bit of neuroscience of empathy based on the Harvard Business Review article on empathy. One of the most effective ways to build empathy is to let someone spend time with the other person for whom they want to build empathy. And from the neuroscience perspective, the neural pathways start to emulate the person whom we are observing. So if you go out and have a lunch with someone and listen to their stories, you are most likely to become more empathetic towards them than when you were previously you have not spent that much time with them. To give you another example, a radiologist in Israel who used to study the reports of the medical reports of the patients actually requested that the picture of the patient be pasted along with that radiology report. And the reason for that was that he wanted a deeper connection. And when they started to do it, his connection with the patient got established, and his depth of studying that report became much more deeper. Now, that's what I mean by saying neuroscience of empathy. So, when you start to see the other person, you start to learn about them, naturally your neural circuitry start to build connection with them, and that happens both ways. So one of the most powerful ways to deepen your connection with your customers is to start observing them in their real life, and nothing replaces than really being with them for some time. Spend time with them so that you start to understand them better. And as I mentioned, every design thinking model out there, which is one of the most powerful ways to design customer experience using empathy, starts with empathy as the first place. And after that, you define the problem statement, or you start to define what you're going to do. Why? Because that's the first most powerful premise, and that's what differentiates a customer centric designing versus a process design. Because processes are do not have that sensitivity, they are just very logical, whereas design thinking can be having a deep emotional element. Based on the research, it's been also found that emotions, though, are the most powerful contributor when it comes to when you emotionally engage with your customer, when it comes to customer advocacy, customer loyalty, repurchase, reference. Even then, it's the most difficult and most underrated area within the customer experience KPIs. So the reason you need it is making a business sense. There is a lot of ROI as well. Based on one of the Forrester's research on on the most customer centric, most successful and customer centric companies, they found out that companies which were most found as the top brands and most customer centric brands, they differentiated on the element of emotional connection with the customer. In fact, Tim Cook, once in his address to the students at a college, said that people will tell you, do not pay attention to empathy, do not listen to them. It's coming from CEO of Apple, Tim Cook. So that's what, is really, it's so important. Based on a survey of 150 CEOs, empathy, 80% of the leaders said empathy is the top differentiating leadership characteristics. So if you are able to bake this empathy, we are in the age where people want to connect more purposeful with more purposeful companies which can connect deep at a deeper level with the customer. Now, it's easier said than done, and I've given you some examples. If I give you an example from the IT world, I have seen a lot of engineers, developers, designers are actually spending a lot of time doing analysis, looking at the requirements of the customers, trying to understand their persona, but are not spending time with actual customer. But the moment that start to happen, especially when I talk about on-site offshore model, a lot of development, designing, and IT service delivery happens in the on-site offshore model. Well, a big part of the team is sitting thousands of kilometers away, and they're delivering their products and services thousands of kilometers away to their customers. Now, I have seen when a certain small percentage of these professionals get to spend time with the actual customer, their connection went way deeper, and they transformed, and they became the true representation of customers' needs. So, what does it tell us? It tells us that it's super valuable to have your teams in every opportunity spend time with the customers. Now, sometimes it's not probably viable, financially viable, or resource wise, it's intensive to send all your people and sit with the customer. So what is the way? Probably the next best solution is, as an example of that radiologist that I shared in the beginning of my presentation, have them learn about the customers' lives. So I remember there was at one point we had a senior leader coming from UK to our premise in India, and what we did is we actually shared his little bit of his personal side of story, which was available on the internet of internet, and we shared his picture, you know, with having personal time inside his house. Now, that was easily available, so we could share. And the moment he started to walk on the floor when he flew from UK to India, everybody connected. There were like thousands of professionals working on the floor, and so many of them could relate to that person. So we brought in a little bit of his life into the office, and that helped us build a deeper connection. So how do you build deep connection with the customers through empathy? Is number one is try and spend time with them. Number two is try and learn more about them by being with them or by learning about their stories indirectly or directly. And the moment you start to do these things, the teams are naturally going to get deeper connection. And then third is you use certain frameworks. We go deep into our, in our customer experience mastery program. We cover this aspect at a much deeper level, where we'll use empathy, we define personas, and we use journey maps to help individuals get a deeper sense of how to build connections. So you use certain frameworks again to inculcate this empathy and try and bring everybody on the same page. And there are so many ways you can actually use, especially journey mapping, design thinking, personas, and few more tools to bring that empathy into your team. And how will it help you? Deeper connection, better brand recall, more ROI on your investment, better sales. The impact is significant. The empathy has a great ROI. It makes a great business sense as well. Besides, in the times we cannot do without being empathetic. In the age of artificial intelligence, uh, automation, robotics, empathy is going to be the key differentiator. If you're watching this live or watching a recording, feel free to drop me a note. What do you find useful, interesting in this presentation? I'll be happy to connect with you. If you want to be part of any of our masterclass, or sometimes I also run short modules for free. If you want to be part of any one of them, do register your interest by sending me a message, and I'll be happy to connect with you. So, with that, I start to wrap this up, bring in deeper connection with your customers through empathy. Thank you for being there. Thank you for paying attention and being part of this episode. Bye bye.